Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. Over-caffeinated and underprepared, oversugared for sure. It's been a holiday, and it doesn't matter how much I tell myself I'll do normal things. I don't eat normal things. I think my body has adjusted to a whole new normal at this point. Vic, how you doing? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's.
Hello, Mary Catherine, and same to you. I have to say, since you just brought it up, I'm sugared out. And the problem is there are people, right? There are generally people who are majority sugar and majority savory. I'm on the savory side and the
Yeah.
salty side. So just to be surrounded by the sweets, like my mother-in-law makes all these sweets everywhere you get. There's treats everywhere. There's treats all over this house now. There's only so much I can handle, especially with the pre-diabetes. And so I'm like, isn't there a holiday where it's like so many cured meats as a treat?
Yes, we
Like
should make
everywhere you
a
go, it's
holiday.
salty things, olives and nuts. Instead, I can only eat so many like cookies and things, and I don't do candy canes. I don't do that. I mean,
Me
don't
neither.
waste my time.
I
Life
have a
is
cou-
too short for the
I know I have
candy
a
cane.
couple sweet weaknesses.
Yeah.
One of which is a cookie that was my grandmother's recipe that my mother now makes.
Oh.
And this is where it all went awry, which is fine because like it's Christmas. What do you get? Your grandma's cookies are sitting around, you're not gonna eat them?
No, you got to get them.
I came into the house, I must have had like 18 of those on the first night.
That's
they're-
the
Now
they're
they're small.
Yeah.
They're small, but
No.
man, they are so
Right. They're small, but they're not Cookie Crisp small.
No, they're not.
But they're not crumble either.
Cookie crisps.
Don't fool yourself. That Jerry Seinfeld used to say, those are cookies. That's not cereal.
But then
Yeah.
you get into this loop and then you start eating candy you don't even like. Like
Yeah,
yesterday I'm
that's
eating
the worst.
Hershey's Kisses. Like
No,
I don't even like
come on,
Hershey's
man.
Kisses.
It's
What am I
very
doing?
chalky. Yeah, that's you've hit rock bottom. That's like rock bottom in your sugar dependency. For me, a little bit goes a long way. All right.
Yeah.
But so I have to say, we got one really amazing gift from Santa, right? And the kids, everybody knows who's getting who. Whoa, I think I might know what this is or that, and I got some cool vinyl, right?
Oh, nice.
Yes, I got, my son got me The Police Synchronicity, which is a terrific album, and Rolling Stones' Some Girls, also
Nice.
really edgy stuff there. But there was a box, and it was to the Mattis family from Santa. So all of a sudden, the kid's like, wait a minute. I don't know what this is, and it's a big box, and it was heavy. You won't believe what Santa gave us, the
What?
whole family. A new Blu-ray player.
Oh,
It was really
wow.
exciting. And because, it takes forever to get to like Netflix and Amazon from the other TV. And there are some theories that it has to do with the brick wall, separating
Probably.
that part of the house that used to be, a screened-in porch, etc. And so it's basically, it felt like you were like dialing into AOL. So now we got the new thing, and the quality is great. And you can actually go onto YouTube. So this is what I was going to say, Mary Catherine, which is,
Okay.
went onto YouTube, and out of curiosity, I actually watched with Kate our eggnog episode on the big screen.
Oh.
And
How did it look?
Well, this is my thing. My assessment. First of all, number one, you look great.
Thank you.
I don't know how you do it. You just pull it off every time, on the big screen. It's she looks amazing. I need a booster seat. I'm shrinking there. And I'm falling into the back of that. If anyone's been to our studio on one of the tours, you'll notice that the seat goes kind of back. And so I think I need to kind of secretly get a booster seat, but I don't know if it would be noticeable, because when I was watching it, it looks like you're sitting on something. Are you sitting on an extra cushion?
No, but I'm sitting straight up probably and towards
Okay,
the
so
edge
your
of my seat.
posture is better.
I'm also sitting on the edge of my seat, because I don't know what could happen at any moment.
Okay, all right.
So there's that.
And I need to get glasses, because new glasses for the new year, because during the eggnog episode, I'm pressing the bottle to my face because I can't read the label. I'm like, where was this distilled? So, not great.
Hey, that's just good comedy right there.
Yes, you're with the old man. So posture, glasses, booster
Okay.
seat. And I, one of the rules they tell you on TV, you know this better than anybody, is don't touch your face. And I notice this, I'm fixing my glasses, I'm doing things. This is why Fred Barnes said to me many years ago, "I've got a face for radio." That's what he said.
I
But
have I feel like I don't observe that rule very well. I'll like flip
oh,
my hair and
compared
do
to me, no,
all
no,
sorts of
no.
stuff.
I didn't even notice it. Anyway,
Um,
so that's what's going on with me. How are you?
I'm good. Well, first of all, I'm excited that in the apocalypse, you and Sunny Bunch can get together with a giant library of Blu-rays
Yes, we
to
have.
to preserve our culture for the future. So I hope
Yeah.
you guys have a plan for that. You do live in different places, so I want you guys to meet up somewhere in Nebraska and make sure that
Oh, yeah.
the art of our time is preserved for the next generation because all the cloud stuff's going to be obliterated.
One day.
Yeah.
One day. This was
So
predicted in the movie Blade Runner 2049, by the way. Just everything got wiped out. So it's very
so
true.
I'm
Own it.
excited for you guys to do that. I don't own those things partly because I have nowhere to store them. Like
Yeah, we have a big.
it is a physical limitation there.
Yeah, we have a
So
large
I'm glad I
library.
have an archivist who can take care of it for us. And yeah, so what's going on here? I did want to say about the booster seat. I went to a vintage Pizza Hut the other
Yes,
day.
I saw that on Twitter or Instagram.
So there's one in
Yeah.
Louisa, Virginia.
Ah,
You can
okay.
search for one in your state.
So not a Pizza Hut Express.
No, a Pizza Hut dine-in experience.
I got to hear all
Yes.
about it. What was it?
And it
Our
reminded
listeners want to
me,
know, what was it like?
well, first of all, they have the classic booster seat, that hard plastic
Oh,
thing, and I felt like maybe I could just bring that in for you.
for me, it'll
Yeah.
fit me. Yeah.
So it was great. So I looked on I found a blog post that had a list of classic Pizza Huts all over
Yeah.
the nation.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if there's one near us because I would like to visit one
Okay.
with my kids. And because they're redoing a couple of the franchise locations as classic experience
Oh,
Pizza Huts. And so I found one in Louisa, Virginia, which is not far from us. And we were nearby at Christmas time. And
I
I was
gotta
like,
go.
okay, let's try this. So we went to the Louisa, Virginia Pizza Hut, and the decor pretty great. Got the red and
Same?
white
Yeah.
vinyl tablecloths.
Right. The curtains. Yeah.
It's got the lighting is the same. The lamps over the chairs the same old shakers for the hot red
Yeah.
pepper flakes
Yeah.
and
The crushed red
and the
pepper.
Parmesan.
Oh my gosh. This is so exciting.
The
I'm
same
starving.
red plastic cups.
Yes.
All that's
Yes.
there.
Yes. The hard
They
plastic.
even had throwback posters of Book It and old pictures of Pizza Hut experiences and old photos
right.
of Pizza Hut ads all around. So it felt
Book It was their promotional thing, right? It was
Book It
like
was
to
like you read 10 books or something and
Yeah.
then you get a free
Yeah.
personal pan pizza.
You had to get it like, yeah, you couldn't, you had to get it stamped and approved.
Oh
I
yeah, you gotta
think. You
get
had to get that in your school.
verified, obviously.
Verified. Mine
So
would have been all choose your own adventures.
so a couple critiques, if I may.
Please.
One, I think the lighting needs to be dimmer. It was much more
Oh yeah.
modern, like a little too fluorescent. Like it needs to be very incandescent,
It needs to. We need to bring back the incandescent bulb.
very incandescent, a little dim because you want to be hiding a bunch of the sins of your Pizza Hut with the
You mean
dim
the food?
lighting.
The sins of the
Mhm.
food?
The sins of the hygiene, maybe.
Oh,
That was my Pizza Hut's issue.
okay.
And there was no salad bar, but I understand that. That's a lot of real estate to give up inside the restaurant if you're gonna do that, and not a lot of people are there for the salad bar. Although didn't they have a pizza buffet at one point too?
They did, and I think that's a
Yeah.
bad idea. It
Yeah, you don't
ruins
want
the
that.
experience because how long has it been sitting out there?
Yeah, you
I
want a
don't
fresh
want.
pizza.
I want it directly out of the oven, deep dish.
But a lot of it was very good, and here's the one thing that I would love to bring back, and I'm sure the lawyers won't let us. The personal pan pizzas come on a plate. They do not come in your dangerous cast iron personal skillet.
You're kidding me.
Because I guess somebody burnt themselves and now we can't have nice things anymore,
Oh,
right?
you think that's the reason why?
I'm sure that's
just-
the reason why.
I mean, there have been great pieces done on Pizza Hut and the changes and sort of the the decline in many
Yes.
ways because they're always chasing after the next big thing. And generally, our culture has been much more on the go. But that's been a real problem. But and they talk about changing the ingredients in the ovens and just the amount of prep that's done. But there's something lost in that. And I know I'm sure there were health concerns about some of the dishes that they were serving. I gotta know, what did you get?
I got the kids all got their own personal pan pizza,
Did they like
as
that
is.
idea, by the way?
Oh, they loved it.
Yeah,
They loved
yeah.
it.
I mean, I guess people do
Um,
it now, but it's not the same as getting in the
yeah.
skillet.
And then I was like, "Oh, please don't burn yourselves
Yeah.
because, it comes very
So
hot."
exciting.
I have always liked a pan pizza from Pizza Hut. I think the crust is great.
Yeah.
I have always liked Pizza Hut as a brand. I know it's not everybody's top of their list, but I've always liked it. So I was very pleased to get like we're one of those blasphemous couples that gets a Hawaiian pizza with pineapple on it, and I love it, and I'm not sad about it. Sorry, everyone.
But as long
Sorry,
but it's
not
okay,
sorry.
but it's yeah, it's the thick crust. You're not getting the thin and crispy one.
I like the thick crust, yeah. So that was our Pizza Hut experience. Everybody had a great time. The nice thing about it too, and this is one reason that you should patronize these classic locations if you can, it's great for families because there's
Oh,
plenty of room in the
yeah,
booth. If your kid runs around a little bit, they're
it's
not
okay.
bothering anyone. You can sort of give them a little walk around the restaurant, wave hi to people, put them
Mhm.
back in the seat. Easy to order, easy food for everybody. I just thought it has that feeling of like, this is a place where families go, and I like that.
I have a lot of questions for you as a Pizza Hut aficionado, and I know our listeners are so grateful because nothing else happened in the news this past week, so that we can just talk about Pizza Hut for an hour. No appetizer. You didn't get like the garlic bread with
We did get the
with
garlic bread, and it was
with the cheese
fantastic.
on top, right? It's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be
yeah. Which, by the
so
way, is
good.
just another
Yeah.
pizza. You just ordered a
Minus the
pizza.
tomato sauce. Minus the it's just another okay, fine. Did you get a giant pitcher of, like, Diet Coke or something? Because the pitchers we used to get pitchers.
Oh, a pitcher would have been a smart
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
We didn't
yeah.
do that. We should
Okay.
have, but we did not. And it's a Pepsi location,
Oh,
so
right,
that's
excuse me. Well, look at that. I just said I
we'll
was an
allow it.
aficionado, and there I
We'll
am
allow
saying
it,
Coke
but
when I should have said Pepsi. I actually this is crazy. Now people love the Supreme. I always wanted to take it a step further and get the Super Supreme, and I don't know if that's still an option. People
I
will
think it
say
was, yeah. I
you
saw it
get
on
to
the menu.
you get to the point with the Super Supreme where there are so many toppings that it tastes like nothing because it's just like there's too many things going on. I'll still take it anyway. I want the olives and the ham. Just throw it all in there, man. It's a party. I remember I would get spaghetti and meatballs there.
Oh,
And
nice.
yes, and also they had a you need to look at 2 things to check out on YouTube. One is the famous Pizza Hut commercial with Mikhail Gorbachev. That was when Pizza Hut, through Pepsi, that's a good point, arrived in Russia, right? This was a new dawn of the Soviet Union
Mhm.
that had arrived. I mean, that was the end. Once you start introducing
Oh, yeah, you can't.
capitalist products,
We win.
well,
We
it's over.
win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. There was an initial swap in the 70s between Pepsi Corporation and the Soviets, and they got Pepsi and Pepsi or the people handling it, we got Stoli in
Yeah.
here in its place. But once you bring in Pepsi, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, I mean, it's the wonders of like, how come we don't have this? How come we can't do this? Well, let's
Yeah.
see how, explain that one. So that's the first thing is looking up the Gorbachev commercial, and that's real. And then the second thing is there was a time where they were selling this most ridiculous pizza of all time, something that doesn't actually exist. It's not part of Italian culture. It's called the
Okay.
Priazzo, I think. And so it's not a piazza, which is like the fountain in the square. It's
Right.
Priazzo, and it's your pizza, right? Just
Mhm.
take a deep dish pizza, and then the entire top is covered with melted cheese.
I mean, that sounds fantastic.
It
What
was yeah, and I think it was only like 3 or 400 calories, I'm
I'm
sure.
here
I
for it.
don't
I'm
think
here
I
for it.
was no, look that up because the commercial for that is also ridiculous where they go back to like, in the old country, and then they have this girl, and she has, like, long blonde hair or something, and it's like, this is, if anything, very Northern Italian. So, just
Well,
look that
Pizza
up,
Hut's
but I'm glad
advertising
yeah.
Pizza's advertising does seem to work because my 11-year-old, as we were walking in, who doesn't have a lot of Pizza Hut experiences, goes, "Nobody out pizzas the Hut." And I was like, "Okay." And
It's a
then
great line.
my 3-year-old sees the building and the logo, and she calls it Pizza Hat, which I
Yeah,
thought
well,
was
that's kind of yeah, of course.
apropos.
It's
And then my 2-year-old says, "Pizza, pizza." And I was like, wrong chain.
wrong
Wrong chain, babe."
chain. Yeah, that is that's Little Caesars there.
Anyway,
Good for you, I'm so jealous.
it was fantastic. If you can find one near you, check it out because we'd like them to survive because they're
I
great
am
little family places. Okay.
starving.
Shall we move
Oh,
on to the
yes.
news after this
Let's do it.
important discussion? Okay. Rest in peace to former President Jimmy Carter, who died this week at the age of 100 years old. I am genuinely surprised that he lived quite so long past the death of his wife, Rosalind. That seemed like one of those couples that would be, you know, very shortly
Yeah, they
apart.
were married for like 77 years or something and crazy. Yeah.
And just crazy stuff. So he passed away this week. Not one of my favorite presidents. I don't want to say a ton of bad things about someone as soon as they've died, but not the legacy for me. So, although there were bright spots, our friends at Reason always point out the deregulation of the airline industry and
Deregulation is big.
craft beer
Yeah,
so that you could
huge.
have all sorts of new creations. I
Yeah.
appreciate both of those very much, but rather the exception to the
Mhm.
Carter legacy.
Yes. So I remember Jimmy Carter because when I grew up, I watched a lot of TV from like the age of 5. And you'd come home from kindergarten and just watch normally the Philly channels, 17 and 29, and there were classic TV sitcoms. You watched them too on
Right.
when you were growing up. But I also, as a result, with the TV always being on, I'd end up watching news. And the things I remember at the time, and this is like 1978 onwards. So this is the middle of the Carter administration. What I remember was constantly in the news, inflation, the hostage crisis, and gas lines.
Mhm.
Less the gas, but I do remember seeing they always had these little images there next to the anchor of inflation or the hostage crisis. And that lingered throughout his 4 years in office.
Right.
And then, of course, after Reagan won, Jimmy Carter became the sort of standard for worst president of all time. That was always the running joke. And then
It's
over
nice to
that,
see him overtaken right at the end of his
oh,
life.
he is,
He
yeah.
lived to become not the worst president
No,
in
I mean
memory.
that's the discussion now, of course. Also, the other thing is now that Jimmy Carter has passed, our oldest living president, still president.
Yeah.
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 So but you do see a lot of people, I mean, they're saying about, sure, he was an earnest, decent is what Biden keeps on throwing around, decent, because, Biden knows decency.
Oof,
Uh,
doesn't he?
Decent man, well-meaning, public servant, and, just happened to preside over some bad policies. But then he really rehabilitated his image and his legacy in his post-presidency years when they talked about the guinea worms that he helped eradicate in Africa and Habitat for Humanity. But thanks to the internet and social media and other, that we're not beholden to 3 networks anymore,
Right.
we are reminded of a lot of other things of the Carter administration. One, the failed policies, certainly misreading the Soviets, what led to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, him talking about the inordinate fear of communism, the crisis of confidence speech. Those were all bad things. Camp David, obviously a good thing, along with the deregulation,
Right.
Israel and Egypt still at peace with each other. That's great. And then people start reminding you that, okay, in his post-presidency legacy, besides Habitat for Humanity, he was going off to these various regimes like North Korea,
Yes.
these goodwill missions in Haiti, putting presidents like Bill Clinton in a really bad spot.
Yep.
He was very sympathetic to Arafat and the Palestinians to the point where Israel was the problem. Do you remember there was a thing where he had written, it might have been a book in the 2010s that the entire the board of the Carter
Right.
Library or the foundation, they had to resign, and people are saying that he's
Yeah.
just making stuff up.
Geez, I don't remember
There
this.
was his support for Hugo Chavez. He loved Fidel Castro.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
he was a
yeah,
person who was enamored of the
yeah,
elite foreign policy cruise plaudits, and that
yeah,
is a dangerous place to be. Like,
right,
it does not generally lend itself to a solid moral compass on that
right,
front because you
yeah,
end up just backing some really bad dudes and kind of trashing America and
yeah,
meddling in things that as a
yeah,
former president you probably shouldn't be. And all that is not good. Sorry.
yeah. No, and I always thought it would be funny if, you know, you're on a panel and somebody says to you, and there are a bunch of, sort of mainstream, pundits saying, what do you think is his greatest accomplishment or his, his lasting legacy? And it would be funny to say, oh, I would say restoring the U.S. citizenship rights posthumously to Jefferson Davis. I think it'd be that would be something.
What a
I dare
troll.
you to throw that out there, Mary Catherine.
My troll would be allowing for the election of Ronald Reagan.
Yes, allowing. He's
Yeah,
allowing.
just like
He allowed it.
just like
Yeah.
you failed and it got us Reagan.
That's it.
So
That's it. No.
I'm cool with that part of it. By the way,
And,
the New
yeah.
York Times headline I think is indicative of his post
Oh,
presidency.
boy.
Carter the critic didn't spare his successors, and it's like, meh. Okay, well,
Well, yeah.
there's a reason that's an unwritten rule, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Washington Monthly, had basically their Carter greatest son Reagan sort of cover story there as well. The media, of course, is doing so much to, you'll see this. They'll do their victory lap and lionize him about all these things. But it's important that we bring up, like when past presidents have gone, Reagan,
Oh, they're not
even
spared.
George H.W., they're not spared. Barbara Bush was not spared.
Yeah, no, I think you get even in the case of a Reagan, who the press obviously does not like, you get some disrespectful coverage. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be disrespectful, but I want to be realistic. You get some disrespectful coverage, but Reagan, I think, got a pretty decent send-off as a very consequential figure, and it had been enough years that they sort
Yeah.
of chilled out on their view of him.
Yeah.
They never will recognize
Certainly vis-a-vis
how,
Trump.
Yeah, they never will recognize how truly amazing he was and what he accomplished was, but because they wanted
Yeah.
the other guys to win during the Cold War, so that
That's right.
complicates matters.
Right.
But I think he got a pretty decent send-off, so I don't mind Jimmy Carter getting a positive send-off. He has a beautiful marriage and family life and church life in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. But yeah, there were issues there. Can I tell you a funny story about how I consumed news as a child? I think I might have told this before, but I was a Reagan kid. I mean, my earliest memories are of Reagan. My first real political memory is the Challenger disaster and the president addressing it. I was in after school, and they wheeled in the AV cart with the TV so that we could watch the president's speech. And you know what? I thought that was a false memory for a long time, because I thought, why would I be in after school for a primetime speech? It must have been a primetime speech. I later read in Peggy Noonan's writings that he gave that speech early so that young people could see it, because so many kids had been watching the live disaster that he felt he needed to address them. So they made the speech earlier so that
To
so
touch
that
the
kids could
face
hear
of
it.
God speech.
Yes,
Yeah.
that one. So I remember that speech, and I remember sort of having a moment where I was like, oh, is this what a president does? And I was only 5 or 6.
Yeah.
However, for the rest of my childhood, there were 3 people on TV a lot watching the local news: Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Valvano, and Ronald Reagan. All of these men were, like, to my mind as a young person, older, dark-haired men who were important as they got a lot of airtime. I didn't know which was which.
You mean they all blended together?
Yeah, I couldn't have told you which important dude was the president. To my mind, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Valvano, and Ronald Reagan were of equal importance given the airtime they received in North Carolina.
In North Carolina, I was going to say.
Circa 1983 and 4.
Yeah, Jimmy V. God bless.
So that was my intake of the Reagan years.
So it's funny you should mention, by the way, really briefly here, the space shuttle. One of the media outlets had mentioned that, one of his great accomplishments was, Jimmy Carter's great accomplishments was pushing for NASA, to save the space shuttle program, which became so iconic. It was like the most deadliest one. It was the one where we lost all these astronauts, both in the Challenger and later on Space Shuttle Columbia. And the second thing is, when the Challenger exploded, we had the day off for some reason. And I remember there was some snow out, but I don't know if that was the reason why we had off. I happened to turn on the TV and saw it. And then we had to leave because my sister and my mother and I went out to lunch to Pizza Hut. It's true. Okay. Now, the last thing.
Really a mid-80s moment right there.
That is really well, that was horrible. Hey, we got to go to Pizza Hut now. The last thing I wanted to say is people forget about my take on Carter is that he was really good up through, the presidency, right? I mean, the guy went to Annapolis. He worked on he was an engineer on a nuclear submarine. Then he had to go back and save sort of, the family farm and this whole thing. He was also a notorious micromanager. And there was also the famous James Fallows, in his book or article, what he had written at the time, noting about Carter keeping track of the White House tennis court schedule.
Oh, God.
I mean, there's a lot. He had to initial it. He would initial, oh, who's going to play next? Okay, that's fine with me. Which White House average.
Wow.
And then Dan Aykroyd, of course, riffed on this on Saturday Night Live. But there you go. So, Mary Catherine, there's going to be a state funeral. Yes, I've heard
Yes.
this, but it'll be sometime in January. I think it's 3 days plus a state funeral.
Did you see that people are reporting, I had missed this when it happened, but apparently President Biden let slip last year, this is the Daily Beast reporting, that former President Jimmy Carter asked him to give his eulogy over a year before he died. Biden 82 revealed the request after Carter, then 98, entered hospice care at his longtime home in Plains, Georgia in February 2023. He asked me to do his eulogy, Biden told a crowd of donors at a Democratic National Committee fundraiser about 1 month later, but Biden quickly caught himself telling the donors, "Excuse me, I shouldn't say that." I don't believe this.
Were there other witnesses?
I don't believe this. I don't believe that 98-year-old Carter and Biden could have a conversation. I don't believe it. And if they did, it's certainly not binding.
No.
Because neither one of them is with it enough to understand what they're saying to the other. So
no,
maybe Biden will eulogize him, but let us not bless that as if it was President Carter's last wish.
No, have you ever seen the movie The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio and Thomas Hardy, and they're fur trappers like in the 1800s? And there's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio is immobilized. He is injured, gravely injured, and he can't talk. And Tom Hardy wants to kill him. And he says to the immobilized, speechless Leonardo DiCaprio lying there, he says, well, if you want me to kill you, I'll make it quick. Just blink your eyes. If you blink your eyes, I'll kill you. That's like what Biden is saying to Carter. He said, well, if you want me to give the eulogy, blink your eye. Okay. Yeah. He did.
That is how I imagine that went down, except that the sentence that Biden said probably wasn't that smooth.
No.
At any rate, I just think this self-important dude is inserting himself by letting slip this information.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
Maybe Carter did politely in a haze gesture or blink, but
that's it. I also think, Mary Catherine, that this is a logistical nightmare for people planning a state funeral followed by an inauguration. I don't know what the window of time is. My only suggestion would be to combine it on the same day, like a doubleheader.
Do it. Trump inaugurated, and then everyone moves over to see the lying in state.
Right. No, that's it. They transform the catafalque into a dais. It's like really quick. There's an intermission.
Case,
you get an intermission.
On inauguration day, Trump could once again tell people to go to the Capitol, but for a different reason.
Oh, wow. It's really rich in irony.
It's grim. Okay. It's grim, folks. All right.
All right.
Have we covered everything with that? We had no time left here, Vic. We're just...
That's it. No, we just ate that up with Pizza Hut and Jimmy Carter. That was great.
Pizza Hut and Carter. That's all you're getting today. Oh,
yeah. Happy New Year.
There was a big to-do over Christmas. I make a rule of not being on the X too much over holidays.
Yeah, it's a healthy rule.
Because you can get really sucked in.
Yeah.
And there was a big fight over H-1B visas.
Ooh.
Because there are two parts of the Trump coalition who are somewhat at odds over this. Okay, so you have the more populist working class group that really dislikes illegal immigration, all on board with that. Also has some issues with something like H-1B visas, which is designed to bring in very highly skilled cream of the crop folks from other countries to add to our pool.
Yeah.
Now, is it an immigration program or is it a work program? Unclear.
Right.
But a lot of those folks make the argument, hey, a lot of these H-1B jobs could be filled by Americans. Why are they being filled by people from other countries? Is this truly what it's doing? Folks like Elon Musk, the tech bro community part of the coalition, say, look, there are a ton of successful Indian American, South African American, as Musk is, folks who come from other countries who are top of the heap. Yeah. We want them here. We want their hard work wedded with the audacious dreaming of America. to create new things. I think Elon Musk is a great example of that. And so this is a great program. Well, those two sides went at it about the H-1B
Wow.
program, which look, there was some ugliness involved, as there always is, about cultures, about races, about all
Yeah.
sorts of things. When you have an online-based discussion,
Mhm.
right? There's going to
Yeah.
be some of that. However, I found it sort of quaint that everyone was having a big fight about a niche policy issue. Like,
Yeah.
we haven't
Sure.
done that in a while.
Yeah, I mean, and forcing people to look into, okay, well, what exactly is this visa program? How does that work? H-1B. And you know, Trump weighed in himself, but I think he might have been thinking of the H-2B program, which happens to involve the people who work at his resorts and things like that.
Gotcha.
Never
Classic Trump, not
yeah.
to be exactly sure which visa
Right.
he's talking about.
I got a lot of H-1Bs here on my property, he says, you know, which sounds, it's kind of a little bit off. Nevertheless, it's good that we have to look into this and say, okay, well, you know, what is exactly the nature of the program? What is good and what is bad? I mean, the pushback from a lot of people is that, you know, this is cheap labor, but it's not. I mean, the wages are fairly competitive. If you're a computer programmer on an H-1B program, you get, I think the average salary is like $132,000. It's
Right.
pretty good, right? I get the argument that Americans can be doing these jobs, but it is not an overnight process. It's not like you can, you know, when people, "Well, we need to just train them up." That is
Right.
easier said than done. And in Vivek's case, he issued that statement that
Yes,
was
I can read some
very
of it.
controversial. Please do.
Yeah. Our American culture, he's explaining why we
Yeah.
need this program. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. He goes on to say, like, more movies like Whiplash, which is about a very abusive teacher, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV. First of all, I don't think he'd approve of a podcast that does 15 minutes on classic Pizza Hut, given his take on 90s TV.
I was going to say just my recommending listeners look at YouTube videos. What does it say about me? You know, like I've looked at them. Okay.
So I want to, as a person who is an expert in such things, I want to point out that Zach scored higher on the SAT famously than Screech did, and Laura Winslow ended up with Steve, not Stefan. So I would say maybe we don't have
It's
as much of
pretty
a problem
good.
with this in pop culture
Yes.
as Vivek says. However, what do you make of this critique of American culture? I
Okay.
don't look. We've for a long time had an issue with the like every kid gets a trophy. So
Yeah.
I'm here for a
Yeah.
little bit of that, but
Absolutely.
besmirching the good name of Boy Meets World and Saved by the Bell, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know what he was thinking.
Okay. All right. By the way, those two shows are like way after my time. Well, at least Boy Meets World. I never watched that. I mean, Saved by the Bell just happened to be on Saturdays when I got up after a late night, you know, and closing the magazine, you turn on and it's
Right.
like, what's on TV? I don't know. This is on NBC, you know, and I didn't have all these other cable channels at the time in my apartment. Nevertheless, the point is, I get what he's saying. I get what Vivek's saying. You know, Americans, we need to get off our butts, less time on screens. We need to be doing more things. It's not healthy.
Hmm.
Everyone's staying at home. I get it. It's not good. We need to get out there and we need to focus. Academics is great. You know, don't be shy about, you know, wearing that National Honor Society pin if it's talking about if you're in high school or whatever. I get it. But it's clearly revealing about how he grew up,
Right.
right? And it's a very I can say this is a very Asian thing, you know, and the most important thing is your grades. Don't worry about
Right.
things like getting a job or whatever. Just focus on your grades. You get straight A's and then apply and go to a good school. It works for people, but it doesn't work for everyone, right? You
Right.
cannot and that's what makes America different is that we're not this general automaton drone culture of everyone's going to do this and only the strong survive and the rest who burn out or decide that they're going to kill themselves or they're going to decide that okay, I guess I'm only meant to dig ditches, whatever, and you know deal with those people later on, and who cares about their career, but we want to just cultivate the best of the best. It doesn't really work that way here. And again, the culture has always been more innovative because we have these freedoms to do these different things and be more creative
Right.
in this way. I'm not saying again that we all spend our time watching TV or watching, videos or whatever, but it does not work for everybody. And it would make everybody miserable. But
No, there's
you
a
can't pigeonhole people and kids. You can't just turn on a switch and say, "Okay, kids, this is how we're gonna do it."
no, I think
It's
there's
like
a
Tiger
there's a
Mom, you know?
there's a yeah, no, that he wants everyone to be tiger mommed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I have fairly high standards for my kids. However, there is power in the weird free for all that is America,
Yeah,
right? That
that's
you
right.
don't have to be that. I think what weds the two sides is basically I heard one person put it this way, but my take is like what we need is a better public education system because we
Yeah.
are falling short
Yeah. No,
of
absolutely
people
true.
who can do these engineering jobs.
Right.
And a large reason for that is probably because we have a lot of talented kids who don't get the chance to
Yeah.
excel in these areas because they go to mediocre or failing public schools that don't ask a lot of them. And in places where we used to have advanced classes where you could jump
Yeah.
into those areas and get more practice and get more trained. In large cities, they're just not doing that anymore because it makes other
Yeah.
kids feel bad to have some people excel. So I do think, there are ways that we have shot ourselves in the foot. And one of the things I hope from a Trump administration is that there are some education innovations that
Yeah.
allow different kinds of schools, different forms of teaching that allow people to get out of the old system and
Yeah.
into something that works for their kids, and that we could find more of our own talent by doing that.
Yeah. I do feel also that the culture I can't believe he says the C word. I mean, really, come on now. But it's, that that the culture is changed and that, nerds and smart people are certainly celebrated more
Oh,
than they
yeah.
used to be, like in the
Uh,
70s or in the 80s. Go
Vivek
ahead.
Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are
Yeah.
extremely popular and
Yeah.
famous.
Yeah. But I also think that even at that high school level now, it's different.
Yeah.
If you see a movie like here I am again, because we watch a lot of, movies and TV, the 21 Jump Street
Mhm.
and Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, they go back, right, to high school. And
Oh, yeah.
the big shock to them is that the nerds are cool, right? And that the
Yes.
jocks don't have their way and they can just bully the kids. And it's like a different world. And I think there's obviously some truth to that,
Yeah.
and also, the idea that we're not going to be making fun of nerds per se is not. I mean, we've been doing this in this country, not like since like, the last 20 or 30 years. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And I went back and the term egghead regarding sort of nerds, that was Richard Nixon making fun of Adlai Stevenson. And that was 1952,
Oh, geez.
right? And
Well,
Nixon's himself a smart guy, but
I also think sort of
yeah,
I'm not anti-jock. Like being an
yeah,
athlete teaches you a lot of
yeah,
really important
yeah.
discipline and
Hmm.
strength and
Hmm.
grittiness.
Yeah,
And a scholar athlete is
yeah,
speaking of, the Naval Academy and the military like
sure.
that's who ends up going to those
Yeah,
schools
yeah.
because they're
That's right.
well-rounded,
Well-rounded.
emotionally mature, and
Yeah,
have learned to govern themselves. And
that's
so the
right.
combination of those things is actually something you do want to hold up, not
Yeah,
just
that's right.
a math Olympiad star on the weekends, right?
That's
So,
right. Reagan was a
and
jock.
what I feel like a lot of our elite students do now though in America though, and I do think this is a problem, is that they end up being burned out in the
Yes.
pursuit of sort of lefty mediocrity. Like
Oh,
you're burned out trying to get into Colombia where you then start an encampment on behalf
right,
of Hamas. Like
right,
I just don't the reward is not there for me.
right.
Like don't burn yourself out for that.
You studied your tail off and getting a 4-point GP, a GPA, and suddenly there you're wearing a keffiyeh, demanding an end to Israel. And it's like, how did this happen? So, is it really worth it for that? I'd say no. But
Mhm. So maybe
anyway,
like just different goals,
yeah,
different pot of gold at the
yeah.
end of the rainbow
We'll,
for
we'll,
that.
we'll we'll
Anyway,
see. We'll see
the
what,
other
Trump has to just figure this out. I mean, everyone's waiting for him to weigh in.
well,
But
and a CFO on Twitter did a big data dive on this to figure out, that's very popular with employers. I do think there's potential for abuse of people because if your immigration
yeah,
status counts on how many hours you can give to this company, your
yeah,
company might take advantage of how many hours you can give
yeah.
to this company.
Ian
Um,
Haworth has a lot of thoughts on this because he
yeah.
himself was one. Yeah.
Yes. So I think there's potential for abuse there. This big data thread is about all that happens in this program. And at the end, Elon responds to this guy and says, yeah, I think I agree with a lot of this, and a reform of the program is what's needed. And honestly, if we just had a very open, somewhat contentious fight about a specific policy issue, and at the end, I'm definitely open to basically any government program being reformed. And if that's the conclusion we come to, that's not
Great.
a terrible conclusion.
Right.
So,
There you go.
anyway, we used to do that like maybe a little more behind the scenes, but here we're just fight it
It's
out
like
over
it's
Christmas.
happening now. We're seeing it now. All out
Oh,
in the
right.
open.
Shall we talk? We talked about Carter's legacy. So shall we talk a little bit about the Biden legacy?
Yeah, a little bit
and the
more
media coverage of
postmortem.
him. So he's even though he's still president and incapable of doing the job, apparently sources say that he regrets having dropped out of the race and he thinks he could have beat Donald Trump.
Yeah,
These
that's a good one.
these sources
That's in the
were
Washington
like,
Post.
you know what? These sources were probably overhearing the conversation that Jimmy Carter and Biden had
Yeah.
about each of their legacies, where they went
That's
into
right.
great detail about the various policies they championed. Sure.
That's going to be a great sort of, a presidential, historian author, a good one, would be able to write a book on the parallel lives of Jimmy Carter and Joe
Yes.
Biden. You'd see how much dual biography, if you will. Yeah,
Ugh, my
that's right.
goodness.
But then you had this roundtable and Jan Crawford and CBS.
Yes, let's actually play
Now
a
it can
little
be
bit of
told
that.
again.
This is CBS Face the Nation with Now
Yeah.
It Can Be Told. And I don't want to pick on Jan Crawford too much because she's a
Mhm.
person who within the CBS organization, when the
Yeah.
chips are down, when remember Tony DeCopel was being beat up
Yes.
for
Yeah.
questioning Ta-Nehisi Coates harshly or even like medium critically.
Honest questions.
She stuck up for him. And I think it's the right thing for the press to say we got this wrong and to say it openly. And you can see everyone in this roundtable get uncomfortable while she's
Yeah.
talking about it because they want to slide right by it. Crawford is not sliding by it. So like there's a little credit due for just saying we got this
Right.
wrong. So here she is while everyone gets uncomfortable.
One of the things we
threats,
also do in the year-end correspondence roundtable is dig into what was undercovered or underreported. Jan?
Undercovered, underreported. That would be, to me, Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline that became undeniable in the televised debate.
At the presidential debate with Donald Trump.
Unquestioned. And, it's starting to emerge now that his advisors kind of managed his limitations. It's been reported in the Wall Street Journal for 4 years. And yet he insisted that he could still run for president. We should have much more forcefully questioned whether he was fit for office for another 4 years, which could have led to a primary for the Democrats. It could have changed the scope of the entire election. Yet, still, incredibly, we read in the Washington Post that his advisors are saying that he regrets that he dropped out of the race. That he thinks he could have beaten Trump. And I think that is either delusional or they're gaslighting.
President
American
Biden
people.
has said repeatedly he was sick during the debate June 27th in Atlanta, and he's always been fine, and he leaves fine. That is his position, the position of many of his top aides as well, even though there is that reporting.
50
Robert
people
Costa.
at a journal interview.
All right.
Yeah, that was like an awkward discussion.
You can see
They're
all
all
their
looking
eyes.
at each other.
They're like a
Who
little
did
panicky and they're
this?
like, are
Yeah.
we saying this out loud? Or are we saying this out
Yeah.
loud?
Yeah.
And
That's
Jan
right.
Crawford is saying it out loud.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me is she says his obvious decline. And I was like, if it was obvious, why didn't you ask questions? And we all know why. Because they wanted him to be preserved to beat Donald Trump.
Right.
That's
Well,
the answer.
their response is they did ask, but then they were made to feel bad by the Biden White House aides who said, "How dare you?" And
How
this is
dare you.
ageism. And apparently that works, making you feel bad.
Yeah, I do think when it comes to the discussion of the capacity of any given it's a weird thing
Yeah.
because it does feel impolite, right? To be like, hey, are
Gotta
you
ask the
question?
question.
But you have to have this
That's
discussion.
your job. This
And
is
then
your job.
It fell to just normal people, right-leaning media and normal voters to see what was in front of their eyes and go like, this guy can't do it.
Right.
Because
So
let's remember, everyone on that panel was banking on Biden doing this for another 4 years.
Yeah.
That's what they thought was possible? Question mark.
Okay. So three thoughts on this. The first one is the point you just make. I keep going back to the whoever on the Biden team decided it was a good idea that we're going to debate Trump. Remember that? I mean, he threw
Yep.
down the gauntlet wherever it was on Twitter or whatever. It's like your move, here's
Right.
my dates, whatever, I dare you to meet me here on this date and whatever. And someone they ended up having the debate and it was disastrous.
Right.
He could have gotten away with, I refuse to debate this man, this whatever. I'm not going to lower, beneath my dignity to
Right.
debate Donald Trump, the man behind J6 and the whole deal. And I think the media would have carried him through and they would have tried to basically essentially carry out another bunker campaign like 2020.
Yeah.
He might have, I don't know how long he might have been able to get away with that because again, it's all very carefully staged, his appearances, his access to the press. And you didn't have that many people in the press asking questions or the fact that he's not doing a press
No.
conference. He's not doing
They're only
any sort. Yeah.
they're only talking about it now because
Yeah.
it's safe to talk about it because he didn't win and he's leaving
Right.
office.
Right. So I do think that, and he was down, he was losing against Trump, which is true, but people wouldn't be talking about his mental faculties the way they were after the debate where they could no longer hide it. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is, well, regarding the media and Hugh Hewitt's always, asking this and asking me about, media accountability. What's Trump going to do? These people are not going to be held. I don't think they're going to be held accountable. I mean, the only thing you can do is not watch them. But the fact
Well,
is
and they
they're
are
never
being held
go-
accountable. They are being held accountable that way because
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
MSNBC and CNN viewership is down in like
Hemorrhaging.
the 40%.
Right.
It's a lot.
Right. And maybe advertisers come to their senses and say, oh, this isn't working for us. Or why are we wasting our money on this thing? And, just because we happen to have a political affinity with them. But I just feel they're never going to, with a handful of exceptions and props, again, Jen Crawford, say, you know what, we were wrong. But here's my question for you, Mary Katharine, in terms of their aiding and abetting Biden and, everyone's talking about the cover up. I don't know if they all knew. That's the thing. I don't know
Right.
if there's do you remember during the Obama years or leading up to Obama years, Ezra Klein famously ran the journo list, right? And there
Yeah.
was that secret email, that list of liberal media journalists who all got together and basically worked on how do we do our best coverage in order to help Barack Obama win, right? I
Right.
think that's what that was all
Yeah.
about. I don't know if that exists in a formal sense. I wonder how much of it is just media, not so much saying, oh, we know he's bad, we got to cover it up for him, versus they had to just convince themselves because they wanted so
I think
badly,
it was
right?
I think it was a bit
What do
of
you
a
think?
mass delusion. Like they convinced. I think
Yeah.
even maybe his staff who interacted with him regularly had in their head. I don't think it was a setup for him.
Yeah.
I think they had in their head that he was going to go out there and do the job, even though they
Yeah.
really knew that he couldn't. Matt Iglesias, by the way, said he was quoted, I think, in Semaphore, saying, "I thought Joe Biden was going to prove his doubters wrong at the big debate. I know that ever since that humiliation, the whole world thinks the entire media was in on a massive cover-up. But the fact is, many of us, and seemingly many members of his team, genuinely thought the situation was better than it was. In a lot of ways, it's more embarrassing to have been gullible and wrong when so many people with no sources and no inside info could see it clearly. But that's what happened. I was just wrong about one of the big questions of the year." So, but the problem is if you're, again, normal voters could see, we could see with our eyes, this guy's not making it another 4 years. It's crazy to assume he can. What he's saying is that people with access to the president, with access to the people who have access to the president, were more able to fool themselves with more information. Like the closer you got to the info, the dumber you were about this very obvious thing.
Yeah.
That does not speak well of the press corps. That's embarrassing
No.
if
No.
that's what happened. And I think that's probably largely what happened is that they're just like, this has to be true, so it's going to be true. And
Yeah.
they do that. Frankly, they do that on a lot of things. I was telling Guy Benson on his show the other day, I call it the icky facts doctrine, which is once a fact is aligned with the right, once a fact is right coded, whether it's school closing information, Biden's health, it becomes an icky fact. Oh, info about guns is a classic one.
Yeah.
It becomes an icky fact. And once it's an icky fact, it doesn't matter that it's true. If you advertise that you know the icky fact, you are advertising that you're not in the in group that gets promotions, that gets anchor slots, that gets adulation from your liberal colleagues because you have exposed yourself to icky people and icky facts. And so
Oof,
if you
that's
said,
good.
I don't know, guys, it does seem like he's ailing, everyone would go, oh, are
Right.
you leaving the tribe?
Yeah.
Who have you been fraternizing with who
Yeah.
has these icky facts? And it's like, I've been fraternizing with my eyeballs. I saw
Right. Right.
Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's part of what happened is they just like, they put up this wall and they
Yeah.
go, those bad people think this thing, even if it's true, not
Right.
real.
Again,
Not
this is
real.
why I really don't believe they're ever going to say, you know what, we with a handful of exceptions, they're not going to be like, you know what, we were wrong about this. And I keep on going back to, Joe Scarborough, which is the more blatant
Oh my
example of
gosh.
him saying,
Oof.
F you if you can't handle the truth, that this is the best Biden now, which is like
The
saying,
best.
yeah, no, it's like, my sister saw Frank Sinatra at the Garden State Arts Center towards the end of his career. And he forgot lines from songs, and he forgot Bill Miller, his pianist. He forgot his name, the longtime pianist, and
Right.
and it'd be like her telling me, this is the best Sinatra, not the one from the
Right.
Sands, not Ring a Ding Ding. No, this is
As
what right
everyone
now.
knows, the best Elvis was 1977 Elvis.
Yes, that's right. By the
It's
way,
like the best Biden and the best Carter
yeah,
had a conversation about the eulogy
yeah,
2 years
that's
ago.
right.
That was the best
That
version of both.
That best Elvis, by the way, actually asked Jimmy Carter, for a presidential pardon for somebody who was in jail. And Carter said, there's no person by that name in jail. They
No.
looked into it. I don't know we don't know who Elvis was talking about. It's like, you got to get him out, or whatever. But
Oh
anyway,
dear.
yeah. So,
That sounds good.
okay.
Well, we should note also
Yes.
Jake Sullivan's comment.
Oh, boy.
This is written up in the New York Times.
Uh-huh.
Even some of his closest advisors, without faulting Biden, conceded recently that his style of governing did not always mesh with today's politics. Wow, that is some gentle writing.
Yeah.
Quote, the president has been operating on a time horizon measured in decades, while the political cycle is measured in 4 years, Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, said in an interview. Dude, it's
Yeah.
a reach. It's a reach.
That's a great spin. And I mentioned this on Hugh's show that when I read that, it immediately reminded me of a great line in The Line of Fire, with Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich. And John Malkovich is in disguise as this donor. That's how he gets
Yeah.
into the gala. And he's talking with the bundlers, right? And they're sitting there having drinks. And he's trying to, he's acting like a businessman. So he's like, what would a businessman say? And a successful one. And what he says to the group is, he goes, you just hear a snippet of it. And he just goes, we look at the next fiscal quarter. The Japanese look at the next quarter century. And they're like, oh, oh, wow, you must be real. And it's a riff on a Nixon thing. But nevertheless, you can't fool me, Jake Sullivan.
No.
Okay.
I don't think 20 years is going to prove Joe Biden right. And this is co-president Jake Sullivan having to make up reasons why the work that he did as president, even though he was not elected to be president, is good work. Even though it's bad work.
If anything, there will be more revelations, including like the photos of Hunter Biden, Joe Biden with their Chinese friends, and despite Biden saying that he knew nothing of his son's business, and nobody buys that. Come on,
nobody buys it.
Come
You
on,
lied to us. We all know.
Really quickly, I was going to
yes.
say Speaker Johnson. He's got to be voted in. It's going to be a close one, they say.
Yes, we will keep you posted on that throughout the week. Quickly, do you have a New Year's resolution?
Oh, yeah. I am. It's been about 6 years since I've been to the eye doctor. It's time. I'm blind as a bat.
Goal.
Yeah, I mean, my
goal.
glasses barely fit on my head. They're all scratched up. I may go back to where, a good chunk of my life, Mary Katharine, I don't know if you remember this, was not wearing these frames, but it was contact lenses.
No way.
Yeah. And the only problem is now with both near and far-sighted, like one eye is near, the other eye is far. It's a little disorienting at first. I think it's time to free myself up and I can wear sunglasses again. How about you?
Do it. I think let's make it a modest list. Number 1 on the list is cook and meal prep more decent food for my family.
What?
And
I'm sure.
Because
Okay.
we eat fine, but like I want to do a few more actual sit-down family dinners. And that
Wonderful.
requires planning, and I'm not great at planning, which leads me to my other resolution, which is the same as every year. I'm sure this year I will finally find the planner that helps me to live my life in an organized and efficient and productive way.
You mean the human planner? You're gonna find a human planner
I
to
have
do
one of
this
those.
for
His name is
Yeah,
Steve,
yeah, I was gonna say he's a great
but
scheduler.
doesn't necessarily translate. Anyway, so those are
Okay.
mine. I'm gonna get back in the gym and not be eating Hershey's Kisses, but that's like sort of a given.
Can
This is
get
just a
the ki
vacation
You
from
know
my
what?
normal life.
It's one thing if it's like, I don't know, Godiva or everything, but you're getting the Hershey Kisses now, that's where you
I
are
know.
at this point
I know.
over here. Okay.
It took a turn. Pull out of the
Yeah.
dive,
Yeah,
MK. Okay.
you might as well get a Tootsie Roll, I mean, what else is there? Okay, really quickly, a clarification. A listener, who on X goes by the great handle "Afloat on a Liberal Sea of Tears." That's the whole name.
Nice.
He says that Southern Comfort continues to be produced in St. Louis, Missouri.
Ah,
And he says also the sickest he ever got was from drinking it when he was younger, was drinking SoCo. He is now 67 and, quote, "still can't see a bottle without gagging a little bit.
understood.
Please, afloat on a
Yeah.
liberal sea of tears, drink responsibly."
All righty. You want to close us out and then I'll do
Yeah.
one shout out.
Okay. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
Thanks for being with us, guys. I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. You can watch us on the big screen. Big shout out for a happy birthday to see Steve Libera, who is a
Yay.
Getting Hammered fan. We appreciate you. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly, everyone. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.